computer. All right. So let's see. Welcome, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited. We've got a fantastic guest speaker. It's 1031 Rob in the house. So real estate investment over the past several years has been really amazing when it comes to investing in New York City. Okay, yeah, Victoria said she was at the wrong Zoom. So there comes a time for some people when they might no longer be interested in being a landlord, being a property owner, dealing with that market, and they want to cash out. So the options are limited if you want to defer the tax on your gains, on your capital gains from the sale of your real estate. So Rob Pesha, famously known as 1031 Rob, joins us today to share some strategies, tips, and ideas, and basically teach us what the 1031 exchange is all about. So thank you so much, Rob, for being with us today. Can you tell us what is this crazy 1031 all about, and how did you get involved, and who is 1031 Rob?
You bet. And Josh, thanks again for hosting and for having me. So yeah, let me give a little background on it. Why do people call me 1031 Rob? And is that your legal name? And do you have a last name? Yes, I do have a real last name. It's Pesha, as Josh alluded to. But I sort of built this brand and a practice around the 1031 exchange code. And I found that this moniker, if you want to call it that, is sticky. People remember it. Sometimes they remember it for the wrong reasons. You know, I get approached and people are like, what do you do? Halloween promotions or something like that? And I'm like, no, it's the other 1031. So I help people navigate the 1031 like-kind exchange code. So people that are doing, selling a piece of investment property, if they're concerned about capital gains tax, or as Josh said, just don't want to be landlords anymore, there's a good chance that they're considering the 1031 exchange and capitalizing on that. Chances are, you know, an advisor like a real estate attorney or a CPA is telling them, this is a good thing. Keep more of the money working for you instead of giving it to Uncle Sam. But it's got certain challenges and rules that I'll be happy to get into that could really trip people up. So it's not the most user-friendly thing in the world. It's a great thing, but it's not the most user-friendly. It's got timelines and rules and things you have to follow and keep in line. So I like to say I offer 1031 solutions to 1031 problems. I came into this space in 2012. Prior to that, I was a financial advisor. I started in 2008. Great year to start financial services. And I tried several of the disciplines that financial advisors do until I found this specialty, which is very underserved. There aren't many of us doing it. Even fewer that are like me that solely run a practice off this. I mean, I'm a very proud one-trick pony. This is all I do professionally. And it's unique enough that I was able to build a brand and a practice off of it. It's very underserved. So the conversations I'm having out there with advisors, with investors, it's empowering because 9 times out of 10, I'm giving them a third option that they didn't know they had. Everybody in the world knows that if you sell an investment property, you have 2 options. You can pay the tax to Uncle Sam. He loves that one. Or you could do this thing called a 1031 that I just said, right? But you have to follow the rules. I'm like a third option. I piggyback on the 1031. And as everybody knows who knows me, I have a menu. I have a menu at any given time of 1031 approved products, highly modular in nature. They come in all shapes and sizes. That's why many of you know that I say if you're tired, stuck, or out of luck, don't hesitate, call 1031 Rob, because chances are I can help. That's basically it. The 1031 exchange code, it's been around for a while. It started in 1921 between farmers as a way to exchange horses and land. Since then, the definition has expanded vastly to include things like air rights and all types of different asset classes. And right alongside in there of things that qualify for an exchange are my programs. The programs are called DSTs, or Delaware Statutory Trusts. And think of them as like prepackaged real estate programs. They're all the due diligence is baked in. I said they come in all shapes and sizes. That just means I have access to different asset classes like multifamily, industrial, student housing, self-storage, and they're all over the country. So sometimes people think I'm talking about REITs. You could think of them as REITs with 1031 benefits if you want to, but REITs don't qualify for the exchange. You can't satisfy your exchange with the REITs. Fortunately, there was a revenue ruling in 2004 that said Delaware Statutory Trusts qualify. So again, that's where my menu comes into play. And why do I say if you're tired, stuck, or out of luck? I boil it down essentially to 4 specific profiles of people that I can help. I primarily deal in the first one, which I'll get into in a second, but I mentioned earlier that I deal in 1031 solutions to 1031 problems. So I target a very specific audience. I always say this, I'm ex-military, I shoot it straight, I give it like it is. I'm not a cure-all. I'm not for everybody, and I'm the first to say that. I'm targeting a very specific group of people. that check one of the 4 following boxes, and I'll get into those now.
Can you tell me though, do you deal with the standard 1031? If somebody, say I sell my my investment property upstate New York, I made $200,000. I don't want to pay my capital gains on there. I want to invest that money into a different type of property or something similar to it, but a different location. Is that something that you can help with, or would you refer that out?
Depending on the profile of the client, I can certainly help. What can I say? I do a lot of pro bono work, so I'm willing to help people and leverage my contacts and my resources in any way I can. As far as my products being suitable for the client and being a good fit, you absolutely have to check one of 4 boxes. And like I said, I'll run through those profiles. But look, if somebody's looking to do a 1031 exchange and they want to be hands-on and manage the property themselves, they're not looking to ditch the responsibilities of being a landlord again, I can tell you right now, I'm not the guy, because my programs are 100% passive. So that's why I say it all comes down to the profile. And once I kind of give those 4 profiles, it makes perfect sense, you know, and I align with brokers and real estate attorneys and CPAs out there that will hear of these scenarios quite frequently. And when they do, I'm hoping that they think, hey, 1031 Rob, I got a guy for that.
So this is really more for people that are either like you're going into retirement, or you're just tired of being a landlord, or you're tired of managing that property. You just want your money. You want to cash out. That's it. And now you don't want to pay all those capital gains.
Exactly. Because my programs are 100% passive, you're literally giving up control to a property management company that runs everything.
Okay.
So you're putting your full faith and trust behind a professional property management company that packaged up this program, and you're trusting them to run it and run it well and run it through the completion to the liquidity end where the investors get their money back plus their share of any back end depreciation. So let me just give the 4 buckets, and
Let's do that.
It'll be crystal clear for everybody how I can add value. Again, happy to leverage my contacts. I often have conversations with investors that don't want to go my route, but you know, maybe they need like a reputable QI to custody the funds in escrow. That's an exchange rule. You know, I'm an option. You may not need me, but if you do a 1031, absolutely have to use a QI or a qualified intermediary to hold the funds in escrow. You can't take constructive receipt.
So that's the QI. Okay, I was wondering what the QI, the qualified intermediary. That's you.
Qualified intermediary. So any real estate attorney or CPA involved in a transaction like that will know that that's a rule. You can't take receipt. You can't take constructive receipt of those funds. Otherwise, you blow the whole thing up. So instances like that, I can refer a QI, right? I'm not one, I don't do it myself, but I work in tandem with the brokers, the real estate attorneys of the world to make sure that this transaction, this 1031 is successful for the client, whether or not I'm in the mix. I hope that makes sense. You know, I'm happy to leverage my network in any way I can.
All right, so the first type of person is?
First type of person. So bucket 1 is, you mentioned it before, people going into retirement. So people in their 60s, 70s, they've owned the property forever, bought it for next to nothing like 25, 30 years ago. They're looking to sell. So they're probably looking at a lot of capital gains consequence. They used up all the depreciation. So they're looking at depreciation recapture as well, which is in there, and oftentimes people miss it. But all in, there's a lot of tax due to Uncle Sam at the end of the day. So chances are a CPA or a real estate attorney, an advisor like yourself, Josh, is telling them, hey, you know, you should take a hard look at the 1031. Makes sense. Keep more of that money working for you. But at the same time, these people are not crazy about being landlords again, or as we say, dealing with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash. They just don't want to deal with that anymore. Whether they've had a good run or a bad run, they're just not looking to deal with that aspect anymore of active property management. Again, these DSTs I have, they're 100% passive. It's literally like set it and forget it. So you're trusting that the property management company at the helm is going to run it, and you just collect your mailbox money and you wait for the thing to end. That's ideal for people that want to check out and don't want to be landlords anymore. The average ride of these programs, it's about 4.9 years, so just about 5 years. That being said, you want to manage expectations longer because it could take longer to flip those underlying assets for a profit. But it could be shorter, it could be longer. It just depends. They're usually pretty close on how they project it, but you want to manage expectations further out. So again, for the people that want to retire and just check out, don't pay the capital gains, but earn a decent rate of return along the way, this is an option. So that's bucket 1. Bucket 2, I call it the 45-day insurance policy. So for anybody familiar with the 1031, you have 2 timelines you need to keep your eye on. The 45-day after you close to identify what properties you want to roll into, and the 180-day to actually close on the properties. It's more about the 45-day that people run into trouble for 2 reasons. They either procrastinate, they just think 45 days is a lot of time and they leave it till the end. The broker gets the panic phone call, hey, find me something, I have 2 days. Or they put all their eggs in one basket, right? And you know, the seller maybe gets a better offer elsewhere, and day 50 something, past the 45 day, and it blows up the exchange. Whatever the reason, whether it's procrastination or just putting all your eggs in one basket, there is something called the rule of three. And the rule of three is an identification rule that the QI can use. And it's the most common. It says that you can name 3 properties irrespective of value. So I like to tell people, if you have your eye on something, great. Have your QI, jot that down. If you have your eye on 2 things, great.
Can you do more than 3?
You can do more than 3. There are different property identification rules. The rule of 3 is the most common. That's why I'm just using it without getting too much into the weeds. But there are a lot of people that just have one choice or no choices. So I say, as you get close to the end of that 45-day identification period, just to make sure you don't derail the entire exchange, probably a good time to call me and say, hey, Rob, what's on that menu of yours? Let's pick 1 or 2 positions as a backup, just in case, because I've literally been a backup to a backup. I've had a client tell me, you're not my first choice, Rob. And I knew that, and he knew that, but in the end, he was happy to have his exchange remain intact and not pay 40% cap gains. So it's an option. That's bucket 2. Bucket 3 is just matching debt and equity. That's an exchange rule. Whatever money you cash out after closing costs that's sitting with the QI and escrow, you want to deploy all of it to get maximum tax benefit. On the debt side, if you retire a mortgage at closing, you have to go into the same position, equal or greater, they say. So, for example, sometimes people may have a credit issue. They don't qualify for something like a 60% LTV. My menu, again, highly modular. And from an LTV standpoint, everything's baked in. All the due diligence is there, underwritten at the sponsor level, by the way, non-recourse to the investors, which means from a debt and equity standpoint, I can hit those numbers on the penny. I have LTV amounts that are 0, all cash deals, to as high as 83%, and programs can blend together to hit that sweet spot. So talk about something that's a real pain in a traditional exchange, matching up both sets of numbers, very easy with DSTs, with my menu. And it sort of leads me into my 4th and final bucket, which I just call the scraps. It sort of piggybacks on the 3rd. It's exactly what you think it is. You have a rock star broker that sells a property for $5 million. They identify a primary choice for the client for 4.8, let's say. There's still 200,000 residual left sitting with the QI. That amount is called boot. That's going to get hit with capital gains tax if it's not deployed into another investment property. Minimums for these programs are typically 100,000, meaning anything north of 100,000 I can deploy into something like a well-placed multifamily, an industrial offering, a self-storage, earn the client a decent rate of return. And when I say decent, I'm talking anywhere from 4.5 to 6.5 cash on cash net to the client annually, paid monthly. So it's not crazy. We're not talking double digits. It's respectable in this environment, but we're also not chasing incredible double-digit rates of return. But it's a better play for that residual amount for the client, because it's kind of funny. No matter what that residual is, if it's 100,000, if it's $1 million, if it's 1.5 million, whatever it is, the attitude I find almost at that point is like, well, I got my primary choice. Everything looks good. I guess I'll just pay tax on what's left. You could do that, but there's a better way to do it, right? You can deploy that money into a program like this, get exposure to a different asset class, maybe that you didn't have, like an industrial. Again, it pays you a decent rate of return and has that opportunity for back-end depreciation. It's just a better use of the money. And the advisors that bring that to the table just look more astute doing it. So those are the 4 buckets, and that's essentially how I can help. So if somebody is in one of those 4 scenarios, this is at the very least worth a conversation.
All right, I put your website, 1031rob.com, in the chat. Is there another way for people to be able to reach you if they have questions?
That's really the best way, is the website. It has all my contact information there. You can populate a form that'll generate an email directly to me. It also has my QR code, which you can just shine your camera at, and it'll suck over all my digital information. You'll have all my socials there, all my upcoming webinars, things like that. It all lives in one spot. So
what about your menus? Does it have all your menus up there too?
No, my menu is not there. This thing changes so frequently that it's something I'm building into the website in the future. But the menu frequently changes. But, I always like to lead with what people like. People will approach me and say, hey, I'm selling a multifamily. Let's talk about these offerings you have. What do you have in the multifamily space? Or, I love tax-free states, so show me something you have in Texas. I always lead with what people like, but I always fall back on what they need from an exchange standpoint. So they're getting the maximum juice out of the exchange and paying the least amount of tax.
All right, great. If you guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put it into the chat. I see Ronaldo's got a question. I'm going to bring him in, allow him to talk. Ronaldo, are you there? Ronaldo? Ronaldo, hi. Ronaldo, you want to
Can
talk
you hear?
about? Yeah, I can hear you. You said you're working with a seller of property in Brooklyn.
Yeah, working with the seller of a property in Brooklyn. I think we'll pretty much have it wrapped up soon. And he was wondering if he could 1031 the money from the sale of a three-family property in Brooklyn into single-family homes in Florida. Is that possible?
It depends on the usage, Ronaldo. If it's going to be held for investment purposes, meaning rented out, that's fine. If he wants to move into a single family home, that's different.
Okay.
Okay, that's good to know.
Cool.
Hopefully that's helpful. Anything else, Ronaldo? You need to follow up with that, or you good?
Good. Pretty much, he can't use it as a primary residence. It has to be a rental or investment use.
Correct. And
Prop-
the litmus test, no matter what you go into, is 2 years. The IRS generally regards that as the safe period. So whatever you roll into, you want to hold it for investment purposes for at least 2 years. You don't want to go inside of that because the IRS can contest it and come back and say, that's not a legit 1031, you owe me the tax. And that's not fun.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ronaldo. Let me.
I think there was another question in the chat. Derek had a question. What are the costs to the client? Good question, Derek. So obviously there are fees in these products. They're all factored in. When I mentioned that cash on cash number before, I said anywhere from 4.5 to 6.5 cash on cash. That's a net number to the client. So that's when all legal fees, acquisition fees, property management fees, everything's baked into that number. The good news is it's factored in there, meaning if a client invests $1 million, their full million goes to work. It's not like commissions and legal gets skimmed off the top. So what does that mean? Everybody at the end of the day gets paid to do their jobs, but it's factored into that number. So if I tell you, hey, I have a great multifamily program here, it's paying a 5% cash on cash net to the client, well, then maybe that could have been a 5.25 or a 5.3, right? But they already factored these things in there. Everybody gets paid on my side, on their side, to do their jobs, but the client doesn't feel it because it's baked into the deal.
Okay, I see. Property Daddy is here. Peter McLean. Peter, let me see. Can you come in? You want to ask your question about the value of the property, Peter?
Hey, g'day. Yes, quick question. The secondary property that you purchase, it has to be of equal or greater value, right?
Should be, so you don't pay capital gains on the boot or any differential. You always want to exchange up, both on the mortgage side and on the equity side. You want to go into equal or greater.
Now, I've heard you mention, Rob, in the past. Thank you for that, Peter. I'm going to follow up with this. If say, you're selling something, you've got a few 2 million, but you're only buying something that's 1.8, and you don't want to pay the taxes on that 200,000. What are the options there?
Well, that's an area where I can be helpful because if you didn't want to pay tax on it, you have to deploy it somewhere for investment purposes. Depending on that residual amount, you may be able to buy yourself a traditional 1031 property that you manage or rent out on your own. That's of course an option. But for the people that just kind of don't want to be bothered with that and want to deploy it into something that may complement their real estate investment portfolio, this could be an option. Again, anything north of 100,000, I can deploy into any one of these programs. So it's a way to kind of just set it and forget it. And I shouldn't really say it that way because there's a property management company at the helm running this day in and day out. But for the most part, from an investor standpoint, the ones that don't want to deal with the 3 T's, tenants, toilets, and the trash, these are a home run because you don't have that responsibility.
And once they give their money over to you and you're able to help them, defer into one of these programs, do they follow up with you? Are you their point of contact, or do they follow up with the management company? Who's their next point of contact?
Good question. And just to kind of clarify, you mentioned when they give their money to me, money never goes to me. Money never goes to 1031 Rob. What I would do is work in tandem with the QI, who's the qualified intermediary, and the client to instruct them where the funds go. Because in any 1031, the funds go to the qualified intermediary, they sit there, and then they wait for instructions from the client or advisors of the client like myself to say, hey, where does this money go? So that's first of all. So once the money is deployed, yeah, it's sitting then with the sponsor of the program. It's going to work for the client. Any questions? Like, I'm always the point. I'm a financial advisor by license. I choose to only do this. So I don't do the managed money. I don't do the annuities. I don't do any of that other stuff. That's why I'm 1031 Rob. I choose to be laser focused on this space. I'm always the point of contact. A hurricane rips through, there's a concern, or just any general questions, I'm always the point of contact. And I'm seeing this through for the life of the program. So let's just call it 5 years, which has been the industry average. Every step of the way, if there are any questions, call me or email
Great.
me.
Great. I see Henry Davis also has a quick question here. I'm going to bring Henry in. Henry, you want to speak? Henry, you there? Henry, you had a question I see about, is there any legitimate place? Henry, you there?
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I think you just sort of covered it in your last comments. A legitimate place you can put any boot to avoid paying taxes. And really, I was concerned about a family trust. I mean, that's making it more into. I mean, if you brought it into out of real estate investment and brought into a family trust, is that something that's legitimate?
That's something I can't speak to, Henry, because one thing I can't do is give tax or legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. So that is something where the CPA would need to come in and weigh in on what the family wants to be done and how it fits into the family trust with the structure.
Great, great. And I saw Peter McLean just wanted to follow up, asking about the 45-day IRS extension. How does
Okay.
that work due to the pandemic? There was an extension. And
Yep. So good question. Good question, Peter. That's come and gone. So we're kind of back to normal now. But anybody whose 45-day or 180-day fell between April 1st and July 14th, they got an automatic bump to July 15th. Those dates have come and gone. So a lot of people whose 45-day, panic or ID deadline would have hit back in, in April, they automatically got a few extra months of breathing room. But that's over now. I haven't heard anything credible about extending the identification rules or the closing rules again. But when they do, Josh will know and I'll be happy to share with you guys.
all right, great. And then people can always reach you at your website, 1031rob.com. I think this was really interesting, really great informative information. Thank you so much, Rob, for sharing your time with us and your knowledge with us today. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this. And I will share this recording with the team. So anybody who missed it will be able to watch it. We'll be able to reach out to you. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
All right, bye-bye.